Let's go across to my colleague Ashutosh Mishra, who is tracking the Tri-Services briefing. Ashutosh, several key takeaways coming in. No rollback. If FIR has been lodged, it may just mean that there will be no joining in the armed forces. All questions were asked and answered. Do take us through, Ashutosh. What were the highlights of this Tri-Services elaborate press briefing today?
Well, Pooja, the point that you mentioned, it is very important for any government job or particularly, any important sector, that if you have any criminal history, once you are named in any offense, then perhaps there is possibility always no. And when it comes to the armed forces, if you are negatively named in an FIR for any conspiracy, any violence, then clearly there is no place in the armed forces or in the system to serve them. Forget about the dream of serving the nation. That's the warning from the Defense Ministry and the armed forces to the protesting youth outside there in multiple state wide-scale protests we are seeing. Second very important point, that since we are seeing the protest, there was anticipation, will there be a rollback on the Agniveers schemes? That's a clear big no from the Defense Ministry, and the officials right behind me who addressed the press conference categorically said there is no rethinking or rollback of Agniveers scheme, because there is a reason. It is not a decision taken in a day or a week or just in a year, but since the war in Sri Lanka to the Kargil war, there was always apprehension and concern raised that why age limit in the armed forces should not be decreased. We need more young blood to fight the battle, particularly in the armed forces. And that was perhaps the reason in several review committees and several reports, this decision, particularly during the COVID era of time, has been taken. Now, very importantly for all our viewers and the young blood, those who have been concerned about those who, applied during pre-COVID era for the Air Force, the Air Force has categorically said there will be age relaxation merely because the medical condition, perhaps to many those who applied that time, could have changed, and hence the medical for all screening will be redone, and since age relaxation is given. At the same time, all schemes that remains the same. The Defense Ministry says the multiple amendments that you are seeing are exactly not the amendment, but as per the plan it is being announced and it is not under pressure. Subsequently, the Navy says it will also enroll the women as Agniveer in the scheme. So multiple important points have come out from this important press release, but now we have to see whether the concerns that the youth are raising, are they satisfied? Are they satisfied with the answer?
And has also, Ashutosh, whether this briefing, because a lot of it was also spoken in Hindi, to reach out across the country to other states as well, and whether it will have an impact. Ashutosh, I request you to please stay on with me. Let's listen in to some of the highlights and the key takeaways from this Tri-Services briefing on the Agnipath scheme. Listen in.
भर्ती होने के तरीके कितने किस्म के हैं? कम से कम 3 से 4 तरीके हैं भर्ती होने के लिए, एंड सबके अंदर जब वो बाहर निकलना चाहते हैं वो जा सकते हैं. कितने साल में जा सकते हैं? 2 साल, 3 साल, 4 साल. सो मल्टीपल एंट्री एवेन्यूज हैं, मल्टीपल एग्जिट एवेन्यूज हैं, एंड वो बाहर जाके क्या कर रहे हैं? वही चुनौतियां हैं जो हमारे नौजवानों को चुनौतियां हैं. अगले 4 से 5 साल में हमारी इनटेक 50,000 से 60,000 होगी. इसको ब्लैंक कर दें. 50,000 से 60,000 होगी. ओके, 50,000 60,000 के बाद क्या होगा? ये इनटेक 90,000 से लेके 1.25 लाख होगी. सो इट इज नॉट 46,000. ये हमने क्यों करा है? इसलिए करा है स्टार्ट स्मॉल, स्टार्ट मीडियम. क्यों? सो दैट हमें भी इस स्कीम को चलाने के बाद सीखने को मिले कि इसमें दिक्कतें क्या हैं. हमें इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर जो है ट्रेनिंग के लिए उसको बढ़ाना पड़ेगा. वो बढ़ाने के लिए बटन दबा के तो होगा नहीं. उसके टेंडर जाएंगे, उसका ये होगा, वो होगा, उसको 3-4 साल लगेंगे. सो दैट हम अपनी ट्रेनिंग कैपेसिटीज जो फौज की तकरीबन 60,000 के करीब है, उसको बिल्डअप करके इस पॉपुलेशन को लेने के लिए जो 1.25 लाख होगी.
So remember, there were several important points that were made, but it was eventually about the violence that has broken out across several states. And to them, all the senior officers from the Navy, the Army, and also importantly at this point mentioning very clearly from the Air Force that there is no place for rioters or arsonists. And that if there is an FIR that has been mentioned, it may just mean that the aspirant will not be able to join the forces. Because remember, background checks are done and the discipline will be a part of the armed forces. But there was very specific mention about who is provoking them, the antisocial elements misleading these young aspirants. Listen in again to some of the reactions that are coming in.
आज का युवक हमारे से अच्छा है. हमारे से पहले वाला युवक, करेक्शन, हमारे से भूतपूर्व सैनिक हमसे खराब नहीं थे, बट हमारी खुराक ज्यादा अच्छी है, उनकी खुराक हमारे से कम थी। आगे आने वाला जो यूरोप है उसकी खुराक भी अच्छी है, उसकी पढ़ाई भी अच्छी है, वो एक टेक्नोलॉजी के साथ अडेप्ट है, वो पैदा हुआ है मोबाइल फोन के साथ, उसको पता है मोबाइल फोन का क्या है। और तो वो कल को जो ड्रोन वॉरफेयर हो, जो आप आज देख रहे हैं टीवी के ऊपर, एक टैंक चल रहा है, टैंक को टैंक नहीं लड़ रहा, टैंक को एक ड्रोन लड़ रहा है। तो आगे आने वाली जो लड़ाई है वो अलग किस्म की होगी, टेक्नोलॉजिकली सैवी होगी। अगर वो टेक्नोलॉजिकली सैवी होगी तो उसके लिए अलग किस्म के लोग चाहिए। और वो कौन सा किस्म है? हमारा यूथ, भारत का नौजवान। ये भारत का नौजवान क्योंकि टेक्नोलॉजी के अडेप्ट है, वो पैदा हुआ है एक ये मोबाइल के साथ खेलता हुआ, कंप्यूटर के साथ खेलता हुआ, और वो आता कहां से है? गांव से। हमारी इनटेक 70% विलेज से। नाउ अगर हमारी विलेज से 70% इनटेक है, तो हमारे को जो सॉल्यूशंस बनानी है उनको मद्देनजर रख के बनानी है, ना कि जो अर्बन एरिया के लोग हैं। सो अगर इन 70% को देखा जाए तो वो कहां से आ रहे हैं? गांव से। उसके पास है क्या वहां पे? खेत या कोई छोटा मोटा व्यवसाय। वो उसकी क्लास या उम्र कितनी होगी? वो पढ़ा होगा तकरीबन 17.5 साल की उम्र होगी और पढ़ा होगा 10वीं साल। मेजर इनटेक, ये जो 70% बोल रहा हूं, ये सारी इनटेक हमारी उस किस्म की है जो सोल्जर आपके लिए जाके आगे देश की रक्षा करता है, ये वो सोल्जर है जो 10वीं क्लास पास है। 12वीं क्लास के हम ले सकते थे, बट सी हमारा काम थोड़ा जोखिम का है। एंड आप देखते हैं जब भी युद्ध हुए हैं कितनी, चाहे ऑप पवन हो, उसके बाद ऑप पराक्रम हो, चाहे कारगिल वॉर हो, चाहे गलवान हो, आपकी भी आंखें भर जाती होंगी और आपका दिल पिघल जाता होगा जब आप देखते हैं बॉडीज नीचे आती हो। तो ये काम थोड़ा अलग किस्म का है। तो आप इस काम को मद्देनजर रखते हुए हमने देखा कि इसकी उम्र 17.5 एक एंड पे, दूसरे एंड पे 21, इसमें कोई तब्दीली नहीं है। ये पहले भी वही थी और आज भी वही है।
Let's go across now to Ashutosh, who's been tracking all the latest coming in from the Tri-Services briefing. Ashutosh, of course, a lot of questions were answered about the violence, the FIR, but also some of the clarity that was needed. Do tell us about that. You know, you've told us how the women will be inducted as Agniveers, and specifically when the question was put with regard to the Navy, it was said that Agniveer women will also and possibly be deployed as sailors. So there are these options that are being explored. Do tell us about the clarity of the deployment and as and when about other questions that have been asked in the past few days.
You know, Pooja, despite this wide scale of protest and violence we are seeing in several states, the armed forces are categorically just moving ahead, and since they said that in few days the registration process will begin, all the notification will be issued, and in fact Navy, in excitement clearly said that from 21st of December, the first batch of Agniveer will start its training. They will have to report at INS Chilka in Odisha. Subsequently, the Air Force also says they will have 2 teams first by end of this, by second week of December, and the another batch in the month of February. Army says it will carry out 83 rallies. Remember, Army as a Jawan, mostly these recruitment are carried out as a rally in multiple places. So 83 rallies, almost all the villages as the Army says, and in all the states it will be carried out, and because the fitness, the examinations, then several other procedures that need to be carried out. So that takes really a long, other than the Navy and Air Force where the online examinations were mandatory. So clearly all this process are going to start, and this is to just hint out, and it is also said categorically that if anyone anticipates that all this pressure the government is going to bend down under the pressure and clearly roll back, there is big no, there is no rethinking, there is no relook on this scheme. They are moving ahead. The process has already been started. But moreover, since they have certain concern, what after 4 years? Is it a retirement or what lies further? So on those, the options yet again being counted that the government and the Defence Ministry have been saying from day one that there will be certificates from the skill development, you will be trained enough to go in the market, there will be some fund provided, then there will be reservations in armed forces, and the states are offering, but certain apprehensions still coming that is there enough, job
that means what you're telling us is that there will be an all-India approach, there will be some time with which details will come, but no rollback at all of the Agnipath scheme. That has now been decided.